All right, welcome to the Conversation Cafe on this beautiful November 9th. And today our topic is about it's the accidental journey of waste not, want not. So it's a topic close to my heart, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest very soon. But before we do that, I do want to remember and acknowledge that Concordia University is located on unceded Kanien'kehá:ka land, indigenous lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. We are in Montreal, or Tchagé, where the university is located, is traditionally land where many of the indigenous nations meet, and has been a place of exchange and learning for many, many nations. And so we acknowledge that, and with acknowledging comes a commitment not just to know and recite this by rote, but also a way to move forward in reconciliation and to act on our belief that reconciliation is important. So continued learning is important. And today we actually talk about land in a very tangible way. We talk about that which comes from the earth and we return to the earth, which is compost, and the story of the Waste Not, Want Not campaign at Concordia. And I'm super thrilled to invite Dr. Keroles Riad. I've always known Keroles as the compost guy, because you're always there at any event when there's compost bins. You and your crew are there to say, yep, this, the napkins go here, the apple core goes here. And we have great chats. But what I didn't know is that you are a former public scholar at Concordia University. You've received a PhD in the individualized program, developing new materials for 3D printing. And you received the Quebec Lieutenant-Governor's Youth Medal. So that is pretty remarkable. And I'm really thrilled that you've agreed to do the Conversation Cafe. If you're watching later, I hope it inspires you. If you're here today, I hope we have a great conversation and lots of good questions. So Keroles, and I have to tell you, I don't know if you saw that, but this morning on my Facebook memory, a picture popped up of me holding a sign. I think it was at one of the events where you gave me a piece of paper saying composting is, and I wrote down something. I think I said one of my favorite gardening activities, and it truly is. It's actually magical to me how I can make my organic bits that are left over when I'm cooking, and make them into soil. And I just always thought you were super passionate about that, but there's a really awesome story about this. So all over to you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I saw your post earlier this morning about the memory, and I was like, wow, what a coincidence! It's the same day. I loved it. I love these things when it happens. And thank you very much for including me. So I'm gonna share my screen, and I can speak. Just being an academic and all, I can speak for just kind of nonstop. So please interrupt me. And ask questions, and because so that it's not it's a bit more interesting and not super dry. But first, before you interrupt me and ask me a question, I want to ask you a question. What do you see when you look at this picture?
I'm attracted to the lovely foliage, but I did, after looking at the green, notice that there is also some very nice cardboard, different waste bins. But I was looking at the green stuff first.
I see the contrast also, like Mark, but I also see at first sight a lot of garbage. But when I look at it, there's probably a lot of stuff that doesn't need to end up in the landfill.
Yeah. Robert?
Yeah. And I see, I see that someone needs to take out recycling and the garbage, because it's piling up, which ruins the beautiful landscape of the plants from the library. But but I see I see Starbucks cup, and like I feel like some of them don't belong in some of the categories, like
Mhm.
cardboard paper, like the ones that have a 6 underneath. It's supposed to go to waste. Um, uh, and so yeah, overall, I just see a bunch of junk which is ruining the landscape of the background of the plants.
Yeah. You know, this is one of my favorite picture, if not my favorite picture of the past 5-6 years that we have been running Waste Not. And I've learned that different people see different things, and I think this is common with photography and art and stuff, where different people see different things in the same image. But I would also learn is that over time, I start to see things that are different from the way I used to see them at the very beginning. So the first time I saw this picture, what I saw was a missing compost bin. And now what I see is exactly what Elle is seeing is a contrast. And what really stands out for me is that there's a beautiful green wall that makes us all feel good about ourselves. But the fundamental operation, whether it's a missing compost bin, whether it's a collection, and also the society around it in terms of how much we're consuming and how much effort are we putting in sorting, the contrast between the beautiful wall and just the screwed up fundamental operation as well as the environment around it with the people using this is what I now see. So this is a lot of evolution that has happened throughout Waste Not for me personally, and I think also as a community. And I just wanted to start with a little bit about sort of my background. And so I was born with a genetic condition that requires me to get blood transfusions every 3 weeks. And essentially what that means is that I have less, my energy levels essentially are generally lower than average people. And so as I was growing up, I've been constantly told what it is I can and cannot do. I remember my parents would talk to my gym teacher. I was like, he should not be playing soccer because he'd get too tired. It's some of these things. And so I've grew up to be very stubborn. And so the whole idea of having disproportionate power, like outsized influence is something that's very energizing to me. And so I feel like my life's calling is to cultivate a sense of credible empowerment. And it's essentially the idea that no matter your size, your relative size in society, whether it's like social capital or physical abilities and stuff like that, you're still able to make a difference that's bigger than ourselves if we work with the community. And so and something that resonates especially right now with all the climate anxieties that's out there because people rightly feel that their individual actions don't have any impact on the larger global picture in terms of the climate crisis and the waste crisis, because let's face it, it's major corporations that are responsible for a lot of the damage that's happening. And so I wanted to demonstrate that a small team of students can make an institutional impact. And this is what I feel that we have seen at Concordia, where as a team we worked with the community and mobilized the community so that we have an impact that you can see at an institutional level. And yeah, so that's sort of a little bit on me. And right now, what we're working on is to demonstrate now that we have shown that a small team of students can have an institutional level impact, can we take this further and do it citywide? So this is where we're at right now. And so as a project that I'm talking about is called Waste Not Want Not, and the problem that we're trying to address comes from the fact that half of institutions like Concordia, like McGill, like residential areas, half of what institutions send to landfill is every year is organic and can be composted instead. This is very much a Canadian problem. Canada actually is the largest, generates the most waste per capita of any country in the world. We're tied with the United States, but it's not China, it's not India, it's right here. This is a Canadian problem. And so anybody that says, oh, we shouldn't worry about our own waste, our own plastic, because there's some third world countries that's not taking care of its waste, that's a lot of nonsense. It is a Canadian problem, and we need to take ownership of that. Landfills are the fifth leading emitter of methane in Quebec. And methane is a greenhouse gas that traps 70 times more heat than CO2 over a 20-year period. So it's very potent. And it's one of the largest contributors to the greenhouse gas, to the climate crisis and the greenhouse gas emissions. So waste reduction and composting should become priority one in every institution. And so I'm going to cut to the chase. We started in 2016, and since then, annual overall waste at Concordia has decreased by 2 months per person every year. And so the data that backs this up is here. I'm going to get my little pointer. And so, as I said, we started in September 2016. And so the academic year of 15-16, that was the year before Waste Not, and we use this as a benchmark of what was the state before Waste Not started. And in here we have overall waste, so that's recycling plus landfills plus composting, so everything's being generated on campus, and it's normalized by population. So FTE is like full-time equivalent. So essentially, if everybody at Concordia was full-time, how many people would have been here? And that includes students and staff and administrator, everybody at Concordia. And so in the year before Waste Not, an average Concordian generated about 39 kilograms of waste in a year. In the year before COVID, which is academic year of 18-19, which is the last year we have proper data for, an average Concordian generated about 33 kilograms in a year. So that's about 16% reduction in overall waste by person, and that's where the 2 months comes from. So it's 2 months worth of garbage that simply disappeared per person every year. Concordia has also, the Concordia community doubled its annual composting. And in this case, I'm talking about the red line here, where essentially it shows the amount of organic waste that Concordia collected in compost bins and sent that to compost. And so in the year before Waste Not, Concordia collected 46 metric tons for organic waste in compost bins. In the year before COVID, that went up to 94 metric tons for organic waste in those compost bins. And so you can see it's essentially double. It's a little bit more, but it's practically double the amount. We also have, our team goes and takes 2 pictures of every compost bin on campus every semester. And we do this for multiple reasons. One of them is to get an idea of contamination. So we take one of the pictures is from the top of the bin. We don't play around, we don't touch anything, but we just take a picture from the top. And if we see a visible sign of contamination, we mark this bin as contaminated. So I'm just going to take a step back and talk a little bit about what contamination mean. Essentially, it's when you have things that are not compostable in a compost bin, we say that's contaminated. So things like coffee cups, plastics, things that cannot possibly be composted. When you put that in a compost bin, above a certain amount of that, like if you have too much of that, the whole bin goes to garbage no matter what. So it takes very few uninformed decisions to put a whole lot of good work to waste. And you should, if you want to, if you want to think about why that is the case, is that, let's say, the reason you compost is to make fertilizers and to make soil essentially, and to return nutrients to the soil, and then you can use that to grow more food. But if you have plastics inside, that's no longer good soil to make food. So this is why this is very important. And so we did this, we do these pictures to get an idea of how much contamination there is at Concordia. And so in winter of 2019, about 1/3 of compost bins at Concordia had visible signs of contamination. In winter of 2020, that went down to about 19%. So 1 in 5, essentially, compost bins at Concordia had visible signs of contamination. You should take this with a grain of salt for a couple of reasons. The first is that we do this is only a spot check, so we do this only once a semester. So it's possible that we just picked a lucky day or things like that. And also, we don't quantify how much contamination there is. So a bin could have 1 coffee cup, it's very minor, or could be full of plastic. They will both count the same. They will both count as contaminated bins, and that's it. But what gives me some confidence is that every building at Concordia has had a decrease in contamination. So this shows the overall number, but if you look at it more granularly and look at one building at a time, you'll see a decrease in contamination in each one of those buildings. And so it gives me some confidence that this is reflective of an actual trend. Now, this was the last time we did the tours. We're doing now that we're back on campus, we're doing the semesters and over the next months. Now, the proper way of doing this is to do a full-on waste audit regularly, so that we quantify contamination and have data that you have more confidence in. But this has been getting a fair bit of traction and sort of visibility. So this is Minister McKenna, who was the first federal minister of environment in Canada. Her office reached out to us. This is in 2008 to feature the progress that the community at Concordia has been doing. And so she did a Twitter story on us, and she also participated in our See You Compost Picture campaign. Our goal right now is to scale, as I said. But before talking about that, I want to take a step back again and talk a little bit about the history of composting at Concordia, because Waste Not did not start composting at Concordia. So this has been a long time coming, with a lot of champions that have made this happen. The first is, I think, the student group Sustainable Concordia, if you're familiar with them. In 2008, that was a year before I joined Concordia in the first place. They bought an industrial scale composter with student money, and they said, and they gave it to the university. They said, we give you this as a gift. Please take it and collect the organic waste from campus and use it to compost on site. And that made Concordia the first university in Quebec to compost on site. And they got a bunch of awards for it. The problem is that it was not maintained properly and they broke it. Now we ship all the way to Ontario to get composted, which is about 140 kilometers away. And what that translates to is that 13% of the greenhouse gas emissions we save by composting at Concordia get re-emitted back again because transportation involved in the process. The lesson from here is that students cannot do this alone. There has to be a credible institutional commitment alongside it for this kind of work to achieve its objective. Now, the flip side of that, Concordia decided to have compost bins in the hall building a few years after that. So back when I was an undergrad, like 100 years ago, the hall building had compost bins in every floor. And the problem was that the community, including myself at the time, didn't actually know how to use this new compost bins. And so they were so full of plastics and coffee cups that the university had no choice but to take those bins away. And so the point here is that the institution cannot do this alone either. There has to be an effective education campaign, grassroots education campaign, and there has to be community buy-in. The institution cannot just wake up in the morning, say, okay, we're going to invest $1 million, we're going to have compost bins everywhere, problem solved. It doesn't work like this. And so the key message here that I'm trying to get across is that a multi-stakeholder approach is absolutely key. And so these are the lessons that we have been learning from and that we have used to put together the Waste Not model. And essentially we started as a collaboration between the university administration and students where we coupled top-down infrastructure with grassroots broad impact education. And so Roger Coye, who was VP Services at the time, agreed to have compost bins on public areas and make that more widespread. And so that's the infrastructure part. And my job with a student team is to run an education campaign to help people learn how to use this new compost bins. So this is how we started. And
just a second, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
because I think I know the answer because I asked you that the other day, but I am curious. This is all super interesting. But how did you get involved? I don't know if you're going to get to that after, but have you always been super passionate about composting, and when you saw this, you just had to jump on it, or what is your story, Keroles?
So yeah, I do have a couple slides on that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, fantastic. Because I just find that so amazing. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, so right now I'm trying to sort of give you an idea of what has taken place.
Love it.
And then I would like to talk about like our personal journey and how a lot of these things have changed over time.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, so before Waste Not, there was 9 locations at Concordia that had compost bins in them. Now there's well over 100. Now I would like to ask you if you remember what I said happened the last time Concordia tried to do this before.
Contamination.
Yes, you were forced to take them away. This did not happen this time. The university did not have as big of a problem with contamination that not only have they not been forced to take those bins away, they have actually been increasing them year over year. So we went from 20 to 40 to 60 to now over 100. The other point that I would like to highlight here is that usually when you put a compost bin in a public area, you're always worried about how the community is going to receive it. If people are going to worry about rodents and smells and stuff like that, these are inaccurate misconceptions, but they exist nonetheless. But what we have seen is also a culture shift at Concordia, is that not only people have not been resisting the compost bins, they've actually been demanding them. And I was getting emails, and I got another email this morning actually, with people saying that I spend all my time in this place. I always eat here. There's a lot of people here. Why don't we have a compost bin? Can you get us one? And so there has been a lot of pressure to increase those compost bins a lot further than this. And they have been so well received. A student group, the geography student group, when they received their compost bin and the whole building 12 floors, they actually organized a ribbon cutting ceremony to introduce the bin to their community and to teach them about how to use it. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna highlight that I was not invited to the ribbon cutting ceremony, but they did send me a video that I would like to play. I'm gonna apologize in advance that the sound is a little crappy, but I love the video so much I would like to show it.
Welcome to our compost ceremonial opening. So, as you know, we've been using a compost bin on the 12th floor, which has made students have to go to the 13th floor, which is not that big a deal, but it makes people less inclined to compost. So now we have made it more accessible for you as a compost, and we hope that you will take advantage of this wonderful compost bin. So we would like to proceed with the ceremonial cutting of the ribbon. It's the best time.
I have watched this a few hundred times because I give those presentations a lot, and it never gets old. I love this. Is one of my favorite videos. And I really just want to give you an idea of the kind of communities that's building around this, that has been building spontaneously around this project over time. Because I think the story at the end, I think it makes a lot more sense when you get an idea of the kind of the community that's building around it. And when it comes to education, especially like what we have, the approach that we have been taking is recognizing that awareness effort to culture change is like vaccines to herd immunity. And what that means is that you can't have 10 people trying to go perfectly zero waste and hope to have an impact. What you need is thousands of people trying, even if they're making mistakes. And so we always focus on broad impact education as opposed to deep impact education. And so we never do those hour-long workshops. Like the longest presentation I ever make is you're sitting through one right now. But usually our goal is to talk to as many people as humanly possible, even if it's only for 30 seconds. And so I would like to give you an idea about the kind of events that we organize with this video here.
We're Waste Not Want Not. We're a student organization that promotes composting on campus. We want to let students know what they can compost and where they can compost.
Bins like this with orange lids.
Yeah.
Here for organic waste. Okay. So leftover food, soil paper, the popcorn bag, go there. Should the orange lid. Yes. No plastics and no coffee cups. Okay.
We're here once a month with our free coffee events. If you bring your own mug, you can have as much coffee as you want. You can find out more about our events on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram.
So, okay. So that little spiel, that 10-second spiel there, this is me on repeat the entire event, and we usually get like 500 people in every time. And so we organize this monthly. And essentially, if you have your own reusable mug, you get free coffee. If you don't have your mug, you don't get any coffee. But everybody gets popcorn, and so everybody's happy, and we get to talk to them about composting. Now, where we make our biggest impact is through the Waste Ambassador team. And so this is a paid team of Waste Ambassadors. In the first couple of years, we did this with volunteers, but now everybody gets paid a living wage, $15 an hour. And the team that we had before COVID, now we have a smaller team, but the team we've had before COVID had 9 people, and they spoke 9 different languages between them. We were actually one of the most diverse sustainability teams at Concordia. And essentially what they do is that they go to an event, they stand next to the waste station and help people learn how to sort their waste. We don't care who's organizing the event. It could be the president organizing a fundraising event for alumni. It could be students organizing a party, a professor organizing a conference. We don't care. It doesn't matter. Anytime throughout the year, you're hosting an event and you're serving food, we want to work with you. We ask you to make sure there's a compost bin, and we send you ambassadors to stand next to waste stations and help people learn how to sort. To give you an idea of reach, between August 2019 till the shutdown in March, there were over 35,000 people who attended events where our ambassadors are present. This is the equivalent of the entire undergraduate student population at Concordia. And we have been doing this since 2016. This is just the most recent data. And I would like you to meet the team.
As a waste ambassador, we go to events at Concordia
to educate people on sorting their waste and the importance thereof.
We do this simply by standing next to the waste bins, and we interact with people, we answer their questions.
And you know, it's all about creating awareness among people because they don't know what are the things which can be, you know, composted.
And if we start from Concordia, then this will spread to the whole community.
Hier bij Concordia ons compost.
هون بكونكورديا بنعيد تدوير الطعام.
तो यहाँ इन Concordia University में हम कंपोस्ट करते हैं, यानी खाद करते हैं.
Εδώ στο Concordia κάνουμε κομποστοποίηση.
Ici à Concordia, on composte.
Here at Concordia, we compost.
And then we also do like 5-minute waste sorting tutorials and class presentations. And essentially we do this methodically. So essentially, back when I was in engineering, again, 100 years ago, there were about 7-8 classes that are common between all engineering students, no matter the program or the department. They could be studying mechanical engineering or materials engineering or electrical engineering, doesn't matter. As you all had to take those common classes. And so the idea here is that if we present to one of those common classes every time that class is offered, we reach the entire engineering population over a couple of years. And so we've mapped this out through all 4 faculties. And between August of 2019 till the shutdown in March, we present about 4,800 students. And that's about 40% of average annual enrollment. Our goal is to get to 100%. But the point I want to get across today is that because it's always the same professors teaching the same classes, we actually develop really good relationships with those professors because we go to their classes every single semester for a couple of years already. And so when the shutdown happened and we had to transition online, even though that transition was very stressful and on everybody, professors, students, staff, everybody, they were still very committed and collaborative in working with us and allowed us to experiment of doing this over Zoom, as complicated as that was. And so we actually presented to about 3,100 students during the shutdown via Zoom. And so this is really about the community that's really building around this. Now we're back doing hybrid, both in person and Zoom classes. But it really talks about how committed the community has been and still is. Finally, this is it's really important for us to build credibility and inspire confidence and demonstrate that the entire community is invested. And so we have those CU Compost picture campaign that Ellie was talking about a bit earlier, where we have a sign with our logo and people handwrite a personal message encouraging their community to become sustainable. And we have about over 300 pictures right now, and it's always ongoing. The entire senior administration participated, students, professors, staff, cats, dogs, plants, birds, everybody's welcome. And I invite you all to participate. If you go to concordiacompost.ca/photos, you can download our template and just print it, write a message, take a selfie and post it tagging us. Or you can use your tablet, or if you're camera shy, you can have your pet set in for you as well. So I really encourage you to participate. And the reason this is important is that it has really been helpful in allowing us to reach communities that the contemporary sustainability movement doesn't normally reach. And so this is one example of that. So this is a picture from Awatif, whose message was to go green this Ramadan. And so when she posted it, it got picked up by Radio Canada International, who did an interview with her in Arabic and an article about her in Arabic to encourage the community to have a green Ramadan. This is Betty from Ghana. This is former Canada's ambassador to Switzerland. She follows us on Twitter and she participated. This is a professor in Singapore, and somehow we got featured in Ireland. The idea here is that we're having a really broad impact and we're reaching a lot of people outside and a lot of people that the sustainability movement doesn't normally get to talk with. And so what we're learning is that when we help people take the first small step of sorting their waste, they will take the bigger steps of reducing their waste on their own. Because all our activity has been trying to help people learn how to sort, and people have been doing that, and people have been composting more, but they have also been reducing their waste, which is the data that I've showed at the beginning. And so they have taken that a lot further on their own, which gives me a lot of confidence that as big as the waste crisis is, I don't have to go take people all the way. I just have to get people started and they take it on their own. And that gives me a bit of comfort that, you know, it's a big crisis, but it's manageable. So here's a story that Ellie wants me to talk about. Just a second. My entire goal so far is to demonstrate the kind of community that has been building around this. And now I want to take a step back on how it all started, because now it seems like it all makes sense. And the reality is that it never did to me. And so the way it started, I used to sit on Concordia's Council of Student Life with Andrew, who's the Dean of Students. And Andrew had $125,000 that piled up over time and that he didn't know what to do with. And so he decided that we're gonna make a big competition called the Big Hairy Idea Competition. I did not come up with the name. It's his idea, the name. This makes that clear. And he decided that this is gonna be for big projects that we're gonna fund really well, but we're gonna choose few projects. So usually with Concordia Council Student Life, everybody applies. Most people get money, but it's always small amounts of money so that they fund a lot of projects. So with this competition, it's the other way around. You want to fund fewer projects, but you want to fund them really, really well. The main criteria is that it has to be a collaboration. So it cannot be just the students. It has to be students working with staff or administration or professors. It has to be students working with somebody else. And so I got to learn about this competition as I was sitting on the council. And so I've reached out to both Peter and Roger. So Peter was the formal director of the Loyola Sustainability Research Center. So he's a professor. And Roger, who's the former VP Services at Concordia. And I talked to them about this competition. I was like, well, why don't we put together an application? And I was interested in composting, not necessarily because I knew what composting is, but I knew that there's a lot of progress that has been happening at Concordia around composting. So I thought, well, okay, there's already people are working on this. Maybe we can put something together that will push us to the next step. And this is when I got to learn about the history of composting at Concordia, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and both Roger and Peter were really supportive. And then I had to write that grant. The problem was I didn't know what composting was, so I had to Google it. And so I ended up Googling what composting is, what compost looks like, and that's how I started learning. So moving forward, this was the first team that I worked with during the first semester. And the original plan was that we're gonna take, so the CCCL gave us $35,000 out of the 125 that went to 3 different projects. And so my original plan was that we're gonna use those $35,000 and spend it all in one semester to do one very big education campaign, because Roger has said we're gonna have the compost bins in place and like in public areas by the time we started in September 2016. And there was new compost bins in public areas and when we started in September 2016. And so we planned all the activities around that. And we tried, and I want to give a shout out to this guy who joined halfway through the organization for the first semester. His name is Ribal, not John. He's just a bit camera shy. And so we worked really hard to put the education activities, and it was a big food festival where we also tried to highlight the different sustainability group on campus. It was kind of sustainability fair, except we call it food festival so that people come and take food. And the whole idea was that people would pick up an apple on their way to class. And then we get to talk to them about the compost bin. We tell them, you see this compost bin over there, it's new, it will always be here, it's how we use it. And we tried very hard to spend our money, including making a robot, a compost robot. This is Anita. She's now broken, which broke my heart as well. But this is a robot where you can control from a bit far, and we had the comedian sort of speaking through Anita, so that the robot would move around, and then the students would talk to it, and then the comedian would talk through Anita from far, which was great. Now the problem, after that, my plan was I'm flying out to Switzerland, and I did fly out to Switzerland because my entire idea here is that this is going to be one semester project, and then I'm done. And then I planned an internship in Switzerland, and I flew there. And then a few things happened. The first is that I was getting messages during the winter semester when I was in Switzerland, saying that, oh, we loved your ambassadors, that we have had them in a fall orientation. Can we have some more in the next, in our events in the winter? And I remember replying, I was like, well, I'm in a different continent. I have not planned anything. And it was really meant to be one semester thing. I was like, oh, okay, well, if you ever change your mind, or if you ever find a solution to send us ambassadors, please let us know. And so I reached out to some of the volunteers who worked with us, and they were so independent and just decided to step up and do it on their own. And so they found our signs and so on, and they decided to go to those events on their own as well. And so this is one example. And then the data started coming in, and we have seen, like, this is the first bit of data that we got after, and it has shown that there's a 40% increase in composting at Concordia. So I was like, well, okay, this is working. And the other part of it is that we still had half of our money. We could not really spend all our money in the first semester. So I said, well, we have money, we might as well try it again and do it for one more year, and then we're done. Because the Big Hair Idea competition was also like a 2-year grant, but then the budget was meant for one semester. So I was like, okay, original plan 2.0. We have now a new team, there are new faces in the team to put together everything. And the Waste Ambassador still goes to orientation events. Everybody's happy, everything is good. But now there are a few things that happened as well. We had over 62 students signing up to volunteer with us, 47 staff members, and 20 professors, which really demonstrate this is a very big community that's really interested in continuing this and staying active on this. And we would get messages like this on Twitter, where people say, I love my school because of this work. Like, they would look at at these images about composting, and they would feel proud of where they are, that they are part of institutions that share their value. This is our appreciation event, and you can see from the audiences, administrations, their professors, their staff, their students, there's a big community that's being built around this. And of course, there's a bit more data that shows that this was not a fluke. The increase in composting was sustained throughout the year and was also increased a bit further in the year before. And so I was like, well, okay, it would be a shame to stop now. And so original plan 3.0, we decided we got a 3-year contract from the CSU to continue our work here at Concordia and just continue our activity. And the reason it was for 3 years was just how many years I had left in my degree. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this till I leave Concordia, and then we're done. And my focus during those 3 years is to make sure that we are institutionalizing that progress and making sure that all that work is in institutional policies and procedures, so that when I graduate and Waste Not disappears, which is a plan, things don't collapse and don't go to the way they were. And so we would continue. And so before Waste Not, there were only the CSU had a sustainability policy. Now all umbrella student associations adopted a sustainability policy. And this is thanks to a lot of champions who took the message to heart and decided to do the hard work of drafting those policies and getting them past their boards and their councils and getting that done. One of the things that I feel like my role was really limited to going to their council meetings and presenting on Waste Not and making the case of why having a sustainability policy is important, and just encourage them to do it. So like my role is really just being a pain in the ass. Somebody else did the hard work here. And I think we're all better off because of these champions here. We also had a contract with Concordia and the CSU who agreed to pay to have a 1-year contract funding Waste Ambassadors. And so up to that point, we would use volunteers as Waste Ambassadors. But that was very complicated because at some point we would have like 50 active volunteers that we were managing at any given point. And we were getting very, very popular that we would get events every single week. And so the logistics of that was a nightmare. And so Roger agreed to provide $15,000 to pay a small team of Waste Ambassadors so that we asked them to do more, and they would go to the events and help people learn how to participate. And the CSU agreed to take the money and hire the Waste Ambassador and coordinate all of this. Now, there's a bit of a snag here. So at that year, CSU didn't have a sustainability coordinator. So I was actually just doing the coordination myself anyways. And that's fine. I appreciated that and getting to take charge as well. Now, what happened here after all of this, things change again. So we start getting the data for waste reduction as well. So all of the data so far that we've been getting, it was just on composting. And I was also very curious about what's happening to how much waste is being created. And so you see here in black, this is how much population is at Concordia. And that population has been consistently increasing. And so the more people you have, normally you would have more waste. But what was happening is that waste was actually decreasing. And so that was very energizing to everybody, and that made it very hard to stop. And then the other part, there was also it was clear that if my team and I would just stop and disappear, there wasn't a credible commitment that this would stay, that will be maintained at Concordia. And so this would happen to the next step. So all of this has been done as a student group called Waste Not Want Not. And so the original plan 4.0 is that we now create a spin-off company we call Enough. And our mission is to do whatever it takes to fix the waste crisis. But the goal here is to make sure that our work at Concordia is done in a long-term basis, and also scale that work beyond Concordia. Because it's very clear that nothing that we're doing is rocket science. This is replicable. Like you can replicate this in other institutions with a large congregation of people. And this is the picture of our team when we first incorporated. And what we were doing is want to continue our education services and replicate that in other places. And we still want to continue being obsessed with data and also be able to do waste audits so that we have more data that we have more confidence in for contamination. And we also want to collect organic waste and surplus food so that we redirect that to composting and surplus food and donation for food banks and charities. And our vision is that we want to hire students from the institutions we work with and make a citywide team of waste ambassadors that are hired from those institutions that we send to events throughout the city to help people learn how to sort their waste. And we want to do this one city at a time across Canada. And our first client is a CSU. So we now have another 2-year contract with them to continue that work here. Now, here's what I want to end with, and I'm sorry I speak for too long. People in Montreal are paying for the climate crisis with their money, with their homes, and with their lives. And the global climate strike a couple of years ago was the largest protest in history. And Montreal has the largest turnout of any city anywhere else in the world. So we live in the right time, and we better be, because the IPCC report says this is the last decade to get our act together. For sure, we also live in the right place where people are really energized and mobilized and demanding their institutions to do their job and join the fight. And that's what we're here to help everybody do. So that's it. I encourage you to participate in the CU Compost Picture campaign. This is Ellie's picture. You can print the paper, or you can use a tablet, or you can make a handmade sign. If you're camera shy, you can have your pet sit in for you, and your plant, and just post it and tag us. Thank you very much, and I'm eager to hear what you think in your comments.
Wow, Keroles, thank you so much. What a little educational adventure with you here. And I feel you've told us actually 2 stories. You've told us very much a story of composting at Concordia. And you also told us a story about empowering people and how to get a community on board. And I've actually taken some notes because we are rethinking about how we do that in our own department. So we have about 10 minutes or so left for some questions and conversation, but I think that I just want to highlight that. I know I interrupted you earlier, but I think the thing that just sort of amazes me is that, you know, that you, I don't want to say you, I guess I will say you didn't have a deep passion for composting. It's not like something you grew up with and you have to change the world through that. It's just sort of something that jumped in your lap. You thought it was a great opportunity. And I love the phrase when you said, I actually had to Google what composting was. And I think that is just, it's beautiful because it means we can start from very small and make a giant change. And I think that is such a beautiful lesson for me. and for all of us. And so thank you for sharing that story. That's where the accidental comes in, and so many rechanges. I think it's a wonderful lesson for life and about COVID, where we have plan A, B, C, D, and I don't know what we'll end up with, but and how to adjust. So thank you. And I'd love to hear you. Why don't we all just open our mics and we can just reflections, comments, questions.
Well, I mean, thank you very much for the presentation. It's also just interesting to know the trajectory and how the bins came to be. I maybe have a question about, I think I've asked this at events before, but one of the things that I'm curious about is there's a lot of like hard or I don't know if they're like corn-based, but sort of like the plastic feeling compostable utensils. Also like A&W is big on their compostable packaging, but there's all the inks involved in making it. I'm curious, like how, like for Concordia, I understand that it goes to like a heat plant, but like how is that traveling all to Ontario? And also like, I'm so impressed by Concordia's project. And I also am wondering if the city has also maybe done a bit of work to learn from yourselves, because I think the city has a lot of work to go, and I've seen where our compost ends up. So anyways, those are my questions. How far does it have to travel, and has Waste Not Want Not spoken to Montreal?
So all the organic waste that we collect on campus gets shipped to Ontario, which is a problem. We're actually the only university in Montreal that does this. So other universities in Montreal use Compost Montreal, which is 5 kilometers away from downtown campus. So local alternatives do exist. I'm going to stop here because otherwise I'm going to get ranting.
No, of course. It's just interesting.
But, no, but I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But I have spoken to the city a few times, not just on trying to work with institutions and collect their organic waste, because there are municipal facilities around as well that are close. But what they said on that though is that they're collecting from residences, and they just started collecting from elementary and high schools, but universities are too big for them to accept right now. But that should not be a problem. Like it's still a public institution, and they have their own funding for managing their waste. They still have the option of doing it properly. But I also spoke to them about our plans in terms of scaling our education, because I think a lot of this is replicable. For example, there's a lot of events at parks and so on, where people have events, and it would be a good place to do education with our waste ambassadors. And so those conversations are ongoing. So that's one of the things we're talking on right now.
No, that's great. I think it's more just I've usually been left hopeful by seeing yourselves at events, and I live in a very dense area, so it's understandable. But the compost pickup and compost usage is just sad. Anyways, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I remember the time when we had a compost bin, but nobody knew what to do with it. So before Waste Not Want What, and at the MFSC, there's a bit of anecdotal storytelling. We had a bin, but we didn't actually know what to do with it. But we were very upset, or not upset. I guess upset is the right word, because we had Mother Hubbard's Cupboard and other meal programs, and we'd have copious amounts of green waste, like literally, like the carrot peels, potato peels, onion, the skins, and we didn't know what to do with it. So we were so thrilled years ago when somehow we connected with someone, and they showed us in the hall building a secret door. And if we open the door, and so one of our student staff, it was their job to the day after MOHUPs to take that bag, which was always heavy and dripping. We're always afraid it would break because it was full and full of goodness, but also, pretty wet and soppy sometimes, to take that over to the hall building, to that secret door where it would then magically disappear and turn into soil. And so at least for the big events, we had a way to do that, because it just, And there were all sorts of other concerns around, worms and bugs and insects. And so to me, this has been one of the big changes at Concordia, and I'm so grateful for it.
And I think it goes to the pictures that I've shown in the very beginning was a contrast. Like, I think there was a time where, we're all very proud of having the on-site composter, but there was still a lot of problems. I mean, there are problems now too, with the operation and sort of making sure that all the compost bins are being collected and on time. Is like your team shouldn't have had to go somewhere else to carry these things, but it happens, right?
But we were also very happy to do it because at least it was a solution that was better than, it's one step at a time.
Well, a friend of mine, she started composting at the CBC. So she's a journalist she's a radio anchor in the CBC, and now CBC compost, like their building have a lot of compost and so on. But the way it started is that she would have a bin in the office, and everybody would put their organic waste there, and she would take it back home every week or whatever, however many times it has to go back to compost. And so she took it upon herself to take that and compost it at her own composter at home and so on. And so it really takes, somebody starting, and then there is institutional change that happens around it. And I think this is similar to what happened with composting at Concordia. There's a Sustainable Concordia that started this whole process, and people picked that up along the way. And I think that's happened in the CBC, and I think maybe within the chapel too, the way that worked, where somebody took personal ownership of this problem, and they decided, no, I'm not going to leave this here. I'll take it to the other secret door somewhere until somebody fixes this problem, right? And then it's a problem eventually got fixed, which is great. And so somebody has to take ownership and take the first step, I think.
Go, Robert.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this presentation. I've got to go. I'm very. I do think that's important to do what we can to compost our waste and try to use less garbage. So it was really good, this presentation, and thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And I am aware of time, so I maybe will finish up here. But I do want to say thanks, Keroles, for that amazing story, for your enthusiasm. As I've said, I often think of you as a face of composting, and you do it so well, and I want to say gently, because it just, you and your ambassadors or the staff just like, oh, this actually goes in here, and then you just end up in this great chat about something amazing. And I think I see your presentation also an invitation for each of us to think about, what's the one thing I can either Google or research, or just think, this is interesting, I'll just do this for one term. I'll just start this project, do this for one term, and then I'm done, or I'll add another couple months. We can just, and that's how we change the world. We don't have to think that I'm going to commit myself to a 10-year project, which, you almost, you've done this now for many years, but when you started out, you started with one term at a time, and you're changing, certainly Concordia, and I want to say the city and the world. So what an invitation and what an opportunity. So,
and not to interrupt you there, but I feel like just the fact that this was not something I was born into, and the fact that I had to Google composting, I think it was actually quite a superpower for me, because education is only effective if you have empathy, and I have been that person who needed the education until today, and I'm always learning. So like when we were designing our education activity, I would always think, what would get my attention? Because I was that absent-minded person walking around throwing garbage in a compost bin, or I'm pretty sure I was responsible for a lot of the contamination in the compost bin when they tried this first time. But the point here is that, like, it was always thinking about what would have gotten my attention, what would have worked with me. And the same thing when you talk to other people who are still learning, like, I am in their shoes, like we're not on different levels. If anything, there's a lot for me to learn from them. So I think it was almost like a superpower to do this effectively. to have this, that we're all learning together, and nobody needs to be perfect to do a positive change. And if anything, it's the imperfection is what makes us really good at it.
I think that's an awesome way to end. So thank you so much. We'll have more events at the MFSC. Stay posted. This is the last conversation cafe actually for the term, where we reflect on questions of humanity and spiritual growth in the largest sense of that word. And so I'm really glad we ended with that. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming and for listening later, and particularly you, Keroles, for guiding us and leading us.